Dr. David Kim had been digging in the red dirt of planet KEPLER 44 to be for 3 months when his metal detector started going crazy. The beeping sound was so loud that his alien partner Zix looked over from across the excavation site with those big purple eyes full of curiosity. "What's making that noise?" Zix asked in his melodic voice. The Zephyrians always sounded like they were singing, even when they were just talking about everyday things. David wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked down at the device in his hands. The screen was flashing red, and the numbers were jumping around like crazy. In all his years of studying ancient civilizations on distant planets, he had never seen readings like this. "I think we found something big," David said, his heart starting to beat faster. He had been working at the Kepler research station for 2 years now, and most days were pretty routine. They would dig, find some old pottery or metal pieces, catalog them, and send reports back to Earth. But this felt different. The two friends started digging more carefully around the spot where the detector was going wild. David used his small brush to gently sweep away the dirt, while Zix used his forearms to help move the larger rocks. The Zephyrians were naturally stronger than humans, but they were also incredibly gentle and precise with their movements. After about an hour of careful digging, David's brush hit something hard and smooth. "There's something here," he whispered, barely able to contain his excitement. They worked together to clear away more dirt, revealing what looked like the edge of something massive buried beneath the surface. As they continued digging, the shape became clearer. It was circular, made of some kind of crystal that seemed to shimmer and change colors as they moved around it. The material was unlike anything David had ever seen in his studies. It looked almost alive, the way it seemed to pulse with a soft, internal light. "This is not from any civilization we know," Zix said quietly, his voice filled with wonder and a touch of concern. The Zephyrians had been exploring space for much longer than humans, and they had seen many ancient artifacts from different worlds. But this was something new, even to them. By the end of the day, they had uncovered about half of what appeared to be a massive ring. It was at least 12 feet across, and the crystal material seemed to bend the light around it in strange ways. When David looked directly at the center of the ring, it was like looking into a deep, dark well that seemed to go on forever. Word spread quickly through the research station. Other scientists and researchers came to see what they had found. Dr. Lisa Chen, station's lead archaeologist, was amazed by the discovery. "Never seen anything like this," she said, running her hands along the smooth surface of the ring. "The craftsmanship is incredible. Whoever made this had technology far beyond anything we understand." The Zephyrian team members were more cautious. Commander Vexera, the leader of the alien research group, spent a long time studying the artifact before speaking. "This reminds me of stories our elders used to tell," she said slowly. "Stories about the ancients, a race that disappeared from the galaxy millions of years ago." Over the next few days, the team worked carefully to fully uncover the ring. They dug deeper. They found more crystal formations around the base, covered in strange symbols and markings that none of them could read. The symbols seemed to glow faintly when touched, as if they were responding to contact with living beings. David found himself staying late at the dig site. Even after the others had gone back to the station for dinner, there was something about the artifact that drew him in. He sat quietly next to it. He could almost hear a faint humming sound, like the ring was trying to communicate with him. One evening, as David was taking measurements of the symbols, something incredible happened. The center of the ring, which had been dark and empty, suddenly began to shimmer with a soft, blue light. The air in the middle of the ring seemed to ripple like water, and David could see what looked like stars and galaxies swirling in the depths. "Zix," David called out, his voice shaking with excitement. "Come here quickly." His alien friend rushed over, but when he saw what was happening, he stopped dead in his tracks. The purple color drained from his face, and his forearms began to tremble. "David," he whispered, "I think we need to step back. My people have legends about things like this. They're called stargates, and they're supposed to be incredibly dangerous." But David couldn't look away. The swirling light in the center of the ring was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It was like looking at a doorway to another world, another dimension entirely. He could feel the power radiating from the artifact, and every instinct in his body was telling him that this discovery would change everything they thought they knew about the universe. As the light grew brighter, both friends backed away from the ring, but David's mind was already racing with questions. Where did this lead? Who had built it? Most importantly, what would happen if someone tried to go through it? The discovery of the ring would soon test the friendship between humans, and Zephyrians in ways neither species could have imagined. Some doors once opened can never be closed again. 3 weeks had passed since David and Zix discovered the ring, and David couldn't sleep. Every night he would lie in his small room at the research station, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the swirling portal. The image of those dancing lights and distant stars haunted his dreams. The ring had become active several more times since that first evening. Sometimes it would glow softly for just a few minutes, and other times the light would pulse for hours. The research team had set up cameras and sensors around it, but the readings made no sense. Whatever energy was powering the device was unlike anything in their textbooks. "You look terrible," Zix said one morning as they sat in the station's dining hall. The Zephyrian was eating his usual breakfast of blue fruits that looked like glowing berries. "Are you sleeping at all?" David rubbed his tired eyes and shook his head. "I can't stop thinking about it," ring Zix. "It's not just some old artifact. It's alive somehow. I can feel it calling to me." Zix's purple face grew serious. "David, my friend, I need to tell you something important. Yesterday, I spoke with the elders from my home planet. They sent me information about the ancients and their stargates." David leaned forward, suddenly wide awake. "What did they say?" "The news is not good," Zix replied quietly. "My people have found 2 other rings like this one in the past. Both times, we sent our bravest explorers to investigate. None of them ever came back." The words hit David like a punch to the stomach. "What do you mean they never came back?" "Gone," Zix said simply. "We sent robots through first. It disappeared. Then we sent volunteers, our best scientists and warriors. They walked through the light and vanished forever. No signals, no messages, nothing. It was like they never existed." Commander Vexera joined them at the table, her forearms carrying a tablet filled with ancient Zephyrian texts. "I have been researching our historical records," she said in her melodic voice. "The ancients were incredibly advanced. They could travel between stars in seconds. They had technology that seemed like magic. But one day, they all just disappeared."
"What
"Happened to them?" David asked.
Nobody knows,"
Vexera replied. "Some say they transcended physical existence. Others believe they destroyed themselves with their own technology. But the stargates they left behind are all that remain of their civilization." David felt a chill run down his spine. "So you're saying that anyone who goes through the ring will disappear forever?" "That's what our history tells us," Zix said sadly. "My people sealed away the other rings we found. We declared them forbidden technology, too dangerous for any living being to use. For the next few days, David tried to focus on other work. He cataloged pottery pieces, studied ancient writing samples, and helped with routine excavations. But his mind kept wandering back to the ring. Every time he walked past the dig site, he could see the soft glow emanating from the portal, and he felt drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Then everything changed. David was in his room, writing a report for Earth headquarters when his communication device chimed. The message was from his sister Jenny, back on Earth. As he read her words, his world crumbled around him. "David, I don't know how to tell you this, but Katie is sick, really sick. The doctors say it's a rare genetic condition that affects the brain. They've never seen anything like it before. It's only got a few months, unless we can find a cure. So sorry, David. I know how much you love her." David stared at the message, reading it over and over again. Katie was his 8-year-old daughter, the light of his life. She was supposed to be healthy and happy, playing with her friends and going to school. The thought of losing her was unbearable. He called Jenny immediately. Even though the communication delay to Earth was several minutes, through tears, she explained that Katie had started having seizures and memory problems. The doctors had run every test they could think of, but they had no idea how to treat her condition. "There's one doctor who thinks he might be able to help," Jenny said, "but he needs advanced technology that doesn't exist yet." Computer models, genetic sequencers, molecular analyzers, things that are still just theories. David sat in his room for hours after the call ended, crying and feeling more helpless than he had ever felt in his life. His daughter was dying, and he was millions of miles away on an alien planet, unable to do anything to help her. That night, he walked to the dig site and stood in front of the ring. The portal was glowing softly, and he could see the swirling galaxies in its depths. For the first time since the discovery, he really looked at the symbols carved around the base of the ring. "What are you trying to tell me?" he whispered to the ancient artifact. As if responding to his voice, the symbols began to glow brighter. David knelt down and touched one of the markings. Suddenly, images flashed through his mind. He saw vast libraries filled with knowledge, medical technologies that could cure any disease, and scientific discoveries that were beyond human comprehension. The ancients, he breathed, they left their knowledge behind. David realized that somewhere beyond the ring there might be the cure for his daughter's condition. The advanced technology that the Earth doctors needed might be waiting in whatever realm the ancients had retreated to. But getting to that knowledge would mean doing something that even the bravest Zephyrians had been too afraid to attempt. It would mean stepping through the portal and risking everything, including his own life, as he stood there in the alien night. Looking at the gateway to the unknown, David knew that the most difficult decision of his life was waiting for him. David spent the next morning sitting by the ring, staring at the glowing symbols and trying to make sense of what he had seen in his vision. The images of vast libraries and advanced medical technology kept flashing through his mind. Beyond that swirling portal might be the key to saving his daughter's life. Zix found him there around noon, sitting cross-legged on the ground with his notebook in his lap. "You've been here for hours," his alien friend said gently. "The others are worried about you." "I think I can read some of these symbols," David said without looking up. "Look at this one." He pointed to a marking that looked like a spiral with lines coming out of it. "I think it means knowledge or wisdom." Zix knelt down beside him, his purple skin shimmering in the alien sunlight. "David, you received bad news about your daughter. I understand that you're desperate to help her, but you cannot trust visions from an ancient alien device." "But what if it's real?" David asked, finally looking at his friend. "What if the ancients really did leave behind all their knowledge? What if the cure for Katie's disease is sitting right there, waiting for someone brave enough to go get it?" "And what if it's a trap?" Zix replied. "What if the ring is designed to lure people in with false promises? My people have legends about devices like this. They show you exactly what you want to see, then they destroy you." David stood up and walked closer to the ring. The portal was active again, showing glimpses of distant stars and swirling galaxies. "I keep thinking about something you told me. When we first met, you said that humans are different from Zephyrians because we take risks that your people would never take." "Yes, and I also said that sometimes those risks get you killed," Zix replied, his voice filled with concern. "But sometimes they save lives too," David said quietly. "Sometimes being reckless is the only way to help someone you love." Dr. Lisa Chen arrived at the dig site with Commander Vexthera and 3 other Zephyrian researchers. Lisa had been working with David for 2 years, and she knew him well enough to recognize the look of determination in his eyes. "David, Zix told us about your daughter," Lisa said softly. "I'm so sorry. Is there anything we can do to help?" "Actually, there is," David replied. He showed them his notebook filled with sketches of the symbols and his theories about their meanings. "Think this ring leads to a repository of ancient knowledge. Medical technology, scientific discoveries, things that could help Katie and millions of other people." Commander Vexera shook her head slowly. "David, I understand your pain, but you must listen to reason. No one has ever returned from one of these portals. The ancients themselves disappeared when they used this technology. Maybe they didn't disappear," David said. "Maybe they found something so incredible that they chose to stay wherever this leads. Or maybe they were destroyed by their own arrogance." Vexthera replied firmly. "The ancients thought they could control forces beyond their understanding. Look where it got them." The group spent the afternoon examining the ring and discussing the possibilities. The Zephyrian researchers brought out their most advanced scanning equipment, but the readings were still impossible to interpret. The energy coming from the portal was unlike anything in their scientific databases. "I've been thinking about this. All day, Lisa said as the sun began to set. Even if there is knowledge on the other side, how would you bring it back? How would you even survive long enough to find it? David had been wondering the same thing. I don't know, he admitted. But I do know that if I don't try, Katie will die. And maybe other people will die too, people who could have been saved by ancient technology. But if you go through that portal and disappear forever, how does that help your daughter? Zix asked. She needs her father, not a dead hero. The words stung, but David knew his friend was right. Going through the portal was essentially a suicide mission. But staying safe while his daughter suffered felt like cowardice. That evening, David called his sister Jenny again. Katie was getting worse. The seizures were becoming more frequent, and she was starting to forget things. Simple things like the names of her friends or what she had for breakfast. The doctors want to try an experimental treatment, Jenny said, her voice breaking. But they don't think it will work. They're basically just trying to buy time. After the call ended, David sat in his room and stared at a photo of Katie on his desk. She was smiling and holding a drawing she had made of the two of them exploring space together. She had always been fascinated by his work. She dreamed of becoming a scientist like her father. Around midnight, David made his decision. He couldn't live with himself if he didn't try to save her. Even if the chances of success were tiny. Even if it meant never seeing her again. He had to attempt the impossible. He walked to the dig site one last time, carrying a small backpack with supplies. In a recording device, the ring was glowing brighter than ever, and the portal seemed to pulse with anticipation. I'm sorry, Zix, he whispered to the empty night. I'm sorry I can't be the careful, logical person you want me to be. But sometimes love makes you do crazy things. Dave began recording a message for Katie, telling her how much he loved her and how proud he was of her courage in fighting her illness. He explained that he was going to try something dangerous to help her, and that no matter what happened, she should never give up hope. As he finished the recording, he heard footsteps behind him. Zix was approaching, along with Commander Vexthera, and several other team members. They had come to stop him, but David could see in their eyes that they understood why he had to try. You're really going to do this, aren't you? Zix asked sadly. David nodded, his hand reaching toward the swirling light of the portal. I have to, for Katie. For everyone who might be saved by what's on the other side. The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no turning back. David stood at the edge of the portal, feeling the strange energy washing over his face like a warm breeze. The swirling lights inside the ring were hypnotic, showing glimpses of worlds and stars that seemed impossibly far away. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might burst from his chest. David, please, Zix said from behind him. Think about what you're doing. Your daughter needs you alive, not lost in some other dimension. She needs me to try, David replied, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't just stand here and watch her die when there might be a cure waiting for me on the other side. Commander Vexthera stepped forward, her forearms gesturing toward the portal. In all the history of my people, no one has ever returned from a journey through one of these rings. We have songs about the brave fools who tried. They all end the same way, with empty spaces where heroes used to be. David turned to look at his friends one last time. Lisa was crying, her hands pressed against her mouth. The other researchers were standing in a circle around the dig site, their faces filled with fear and sadness. Even the normally calm Zephyrians looked shaken. I'm not doing this because I'm brave, David said, his voice getting stronger. I'm doing this because I'm terrified. Terrified of losing Katie. Terrified of living with the knowledge that I had a chance to save her, and I was too scared to take it. He pulled out his recording device and started a new message. Katie, if you're listening to this, it means I'm about to do something that might seem crazy. But I want you to know that everything I do because I love you more than anything. In the universe, you are the most important thing in my life, and I would travel to the ends of space to keep you safe. David's hands were shaking as he adjusted his backpack and checked his equipment one more time. He had brought a communication device, hoping it might work across dimensions. He had packed energy bars, water, and a small medical kit. It wasn't much, but it was all he could carry. If I don't come back, he said to the group, make sure Katie knows that her father loved her. Make sure she knows that she should never give up, no matter how hard things get. The portal began to pulse faster, as if it could sense his intentions. The light grew brighter, and David could hear a strange humming sound coming from deep within. The ring, it was almost like music, but unlike anything he had ever heard before. David Zick said, his voice breaking with emotion. My people have a saying. The stars remember the brave. If you must do this, then know that you will be remembered. Take care of each other, David said, taking a step closer to the portal. And if I find what I'm looking for, I'll find a way to let you know. The energy from the ring was getting stronger now, making his hair stand on end and his skin tingle. David could feel the power of the ancient technology flowing through him. For a moment, he wondered if the ancients had felt this same mixture of fear and excitement when they had first used their stargates. Lisa suddenly ran forward and grabbed his arm. David, wait. What if there's another way? What if we could study the ring more? Figure out how it works without you having to go through it. There's no time, David replied gently. Katie doesn't have months or years for us to study this thing. She has weeks, maybe days. He pulled Lisa into a hug, feeling her tears on his shoulder. Promise me you'll continue the research. Promise me you'll try to understand what the ancients were trying to teach us. I promise, Lisa whispered. David stepped back and looked at the portal one more time. A swirling light seemed to form. Patterns now, almost like they were trying to communicate with him. He thought he could see shapes in the depths, structures that might be buildings or ships or something else entirely. Here goes nothing, he said with a nervous laugh. But as he raised his foot to step toward the portal, something unexpected happened. The ring began to vibrate, and the symbols around its base started glowing brighter than ever before. The humming sound grew louder, and David could hear what sounded like voices in the distance. Wait, Commander Vexeta said suddenly. The ring is reacting to your presence. It's never done that before. David paused, his foot still raised. What do you think it means? I don't know, Vexthera replied. But maybe the ancients left the ring for someone like you. Someone willing to take the risk that no one else would take. The portal was calling to him now, and David knew there was no point in waiting any longer. Every second he delayed was another second that Katie's condition might worsen. He closed his eyes and thought about his daughter's smile, her laugh, the way she used to fall asleep in his arms when she was little. I'm coming, Katie, he whispered. David opened his eyes and stepped forward. The moment his foot crossed the threshold of the ring, the world exploded into light and sound. He felt like he was being pulled apart and put back together at the same time. The sensation was terrifying and wonderful, like being born again in a universe made of pure energy behind him. He could hear his friends shouting his name, but their voices seemed to be coming from very far away. The portal had accepted him, and there was no turning back now as the light consumed him completely. David's last thought was of Katie, and the hope that wherever he was going, he would find the answers that could save her life. David woke up floating in the strangest place he had ever seen. He wasn't standing on solid ground, but somehow he wasn't falling either. Around him, massive crystal structures hung in the air like frozen waterfalls, each one glowing with soft, colorful light. The space seemed to go on forever in all directions, filled with floating islands of knowledge that sparkled like jewels. Where am I? He whispered, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness, as if responding to his words. One of the crystal structures began to move toward him. As it got closer, David could see that it wasn't just a simple crystal. It was more like a living library, with thousands of glowing symbols flowing across its surface like water. The symbols were similar to the ones he had seen around the ring, but these were moving and changing, as if they were alive. David reached out carefully and touched the surface of the crystal. Immediately, his mind was flooded with images and information. He saw the history of the ancients, their rise from a simple civilization to masters of space and time. He watched as they discovered the secrets of life itself, learning to cure diseases, extend lifespans, and even bring back the dead. But most importantly, he saw their medical knowledge. Treatments for genetic disorders, ways to repair damaged brain tissue, methods for regenerating organs and healing wounds that should have been impossible to fix. The cure for Katie's condition was right there, flowing through his mind like a river of hope. This is incredible, David breathed, tears streaming down his face. They really did leave everything behind. A soft voice spoke from somewhere in the space around him. "Welcome, seeker of knowledge. We have been waiting for someone like you." David spun around, looking for the source of the voice. "Who's there? Are you one of the ancients?" "We are what remains of them," the voice replied. "When our physical forms became too limiting, we chose to become part of our greatest creation. We are the guardians of all knowledge, the keepers of everything our people learned during millions of years of existence." A figure began to form in the space in front of David. It wasn't quite solid, more like a hologram made of light and energy. The being looked almost human, but taller and more graceful, with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the ages. "Your daughter is dying," the ancient said gently. "I can see the pain in your heart, the desperation that drove you to take this impossible journey. You are the first living being to cross the threshold in over 1,000 years. Can you help her?" David asked, his voice shaking with emotion. "Can you save Katie?" "We can give you the knowledge you seek," the ancient replied. "But knowledge always comes with a price. The medical technology you need is incredibly advanced. It will take years for your people to understand it, even with our help." David felt his heart sinking. "Katie doesn't have years. She has days, maybe weeks." Ancient moved closer, and David could feel the immense power radiating from the being. "There is another way. I could give you a device that contains the cure, something that would work immediately. But to create such a device, you would need to stay here with us. You would need to become part of our collective consciousness, adding your human perspective to our eternal library." "You mean I could never go home?" David asked. "Your physical form would remain here, but your consciousness would live forever, helping us guide and protect the knowledge of the universe. You would be immortal, but you would also be alone, separated from everyone you love." David closed his eyes and thought about Katie. He pictured her lying in a hospital bed, getting weaker every day. He imagined Jenny sitting beside her, holding her hand and trying to stay strong. The thought of his daughter dying while he had the power to save her was unbearable. "There has to be another way," he said desperately. "There is," the ancient replied. "But it requires something that has never been attempted before. We could send you back with the knowledge you need, but we would need to compress millions of years of medical research into a form that your mind can carry. The process would be dangerous, and there's no guarantee that you would survive it." "What are the chances?" David asked. "Perhaps 1 in 10, the ancient said honestly. "But if you succeed, you would return to your world with the power to save. Not just your daughter, but millions of others who suffer from diseases that your people consider incurable." David didn't hesitate. "I'll take those odds." The ancient smiled, and for a moment, David could see the being's former physical form. The scientist and explorer that it had once been. "Your species continues to amaze us. Even when faced with almost certain death, you choose to take the risk if it means helping others." "We're not the smartest species in the galaxy," David said, "but we don't give up easily." The process began immediately. David felt the knowledge of the ancients flowing into his mind like a flood. Medical procedures, genetic treatments, molecular engineering techniques that were beyond anything humans had ever imagined. His brain felt like it was on fire, but he held on, thinking about Katie's smile and the promise he had made to save her. When the transfer was complete, David found himself back at the original ring on Kepler 4 for 2b, but only minutes had passed, even though it felt like he had been gone. For hours, Zix and the others were still standing there, staring at the portal in shock. "David!" Zix shouted, running toward him. "You're back. How is that possible?" David looked down at his hands and saw that they were glowing with a faint blue light. The knowledge was there, stored in his mind, and somehow integrated into his very cells. He could feel the cure for Katie's disease flowing through his thoughts, complete with detailed instructions for creating the treatment. "I found it," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "I found the cure." As the portal behind him began to fade, David realized that he had accomplished something that no one in the history of the galaxy had ever done. He had gone beyond the threshold, learned from the ancients, returned to tell the tale. But more importantly, he had saved his daughter's life. 3 weeks later, David stood in a hospital room on Earth, watching as Katie sat up in bed and asked for her favorite ice cream. The ancient treatment had worked perfectly, not just curing her disease, but making her stronger and healthier than she had ever been before. "Dad," she said, hugging him tightly, "I knew you would find a way to help me. I never stopped believing." David smiled and held his daughter close, knowing that sometimes the greatest discoveries require someone brave enough to take the leap that no one else dares to make. The universe was full of wonders, and humanity was just beginning to explore them.